Captain J. Kim stood tall at the center of the Ed's Discovery's bridge, hands clasped neatly behind his back. Through the massive viewport, a formation of sleek alien vessels slid into position, encircling their ship with unsettling precision. The ships, sharp-edged and glistening like obsidian blades, belonged to the Galactic Concordat, a galactic coalition no one on Earth even knew existed until now. "Sir, they've completely surrounded us," Lieutenant Park reported, fingers flying across her console as she tracked the alien ships. Her voice was calm, but Kim noticed the tension etched around her eyes. "Maintain position," he ordered firmly. "We're here on a peaceful mission. Let's not give them a reason to think otherwise." The Discovery represented humanity's hope for peaceful first contact. After decades of collaboration, Earth's nations had built their first faster-than-light ship, an elegant blend of cutting-edge physics, hope, and diplomacy. On board were top scientists, seasoned diplomats, and a crew chosen for both skill and temperament. Their mission: introduce humanity to the greater galactic community. But no one had anticipated this. Lieutenant Park looked up again. "They're hailing us, sir. Third time this hour." Kim took a slow breath, put them on screen. The view flickered. The image that replaced the starscape made several crew members instinctively tense. The alien ambassador had a translucent, nearly skinless face fluid pulsing beneath the surface like living circuitry. 6 eyes blinked independently, arranged in 2 neat rows. His mouth, when it moved, revealed jet-black stone-like teeth. "I am Ambassador Talek of the Galactic Concordat," the translator relayed, converting the creature's rapid clicking and whistling. "Captain Kim, your continued delay is disappointing." Kim gave a small, respectful bow. "Earth appreciates the Concordat's interest, but we need time to consider your proposal." "Time?" Talek repeated, almost spitting the word. "Your species has existed for a blink of an eye. Your technology is primitive. Your understanding of galactic order is non-existent. What you require is guidance, not time." Kim's jaw tightened. He kept his voice even. "Nevertheless, we humans." Talus interrupted sharply, his upper eyes narrowed. "Let me be clear. The Galactic Concordat has stood for 10,000 years. We have brought stability to over 100 star systems. Your species will become a protectorate. You will surrender your autonomy, and we will ensure your development occurs in line with our galactic protocols." A stunned murmur rippled through the bridge. Kim raised his hand, silencing them. He stood straighter, chin lifted. "With all due respect, Ambassador, Earth seeks friendship, not subjugation. We join the stars as equals, not as subjects. We must decline your offer." There was a pause. Talek's 6 eyes blinked in surprise, an expression Kim was quickly learning to recognize. "Decline?" Talek's voice rose. "Captain, perhaps I have not been clear. This is not an offer. This is how the galaxy functions. Lesser species know their place." "We understand your position," Kim said, "but Earth has its own. We seek peaceful cooperation with all spacefaring civilizations, but we will not surrender our sovereignty." Talus's eyes became narrow slits. "Then there is nothing more to discuss." Kim nodded. "Then we will return to Earth." Before the words had even left his mouth, the Discovery was rocked by a sudden jolt. Kim was thrown back against his chair. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and red warnings flashed across every screen. "They've locked weapons on us," Park shouted, her composure cracking. "Shields up. Evasive maneuvers?" Kim barked. "They're cutting through our defenses like they aren't even there," the tactical officer called out. Another blast ripped through the ship. A support beam collapsed, smashing into the floor just feet from the command chair. Sparks flew, fires ignited in the ceiling conduits. "All hands emergency protocols," Kim yelled. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them the Concordat has..." The third blast hit directly above the bridge. The ceiling imploded. Screams filled the air. 2 officers were killed instantly. Flames licked the consoles. Through the chaos, Kim caught one last glimpse of Ambassador Talek on the screen, silent, expressionless, 6 eyes watching. "Get to the escape pods," Kim shouted, helping a wounded engineer. "They won't make it," Park gasped, grabbing his arm. "They're weapons." She never finished. The ship shuddered again. A white-hot light washed over everything, and then there was nothing. 3 days after the Ed's discovery was destroyed, Ambassador Talek stood before the grand chamber of the Concorded High Council. The chamber was a vast circular auditorium built of polished stone and shimmering metal, its dome overhead glowing with the slow pulse of artificial starlight. Around Talek, seated in ascending rings, were the appointed representatives of the 17 most powerful species in the galaxy: elders, strategists, scholars, and leaders of the galactic concordity. He stood alone in the center of the chamber, tall and composed, his 6 eyes blinking in calculated rhythm. His voice, rendered smooth and precise by the universal translator, echoed calmly through the vast hall. "High Counselors," he began with a respectful bow of his translucent head, "I regret to inform you that our first encounter with the species known as humans did not end as we hoped." A low murmur rolled through the chamber. One of the elder counselors, a towering being of flowing tendrils and deep-set crystalline eyes, raised a long-fingered hand. "Explain," he said simply, his tone heavy with authority. Talek extended an arm and activated a holographic projection. Footage of the discovery played for all to see: its sleek human design, its bridge crew, and the final moments before its destruction. He had carefully edited the recordings, ensuring the story aligned with what the council needed to believe. As instructed, Talek said smoothly, "I offered them protectorate status under the Concordate. We presented them with terms clearly and respectfully, but their leader, Captain Kim, rejected our guidance. He activated weapons systems and attempted to flee. Their ship was a clear and immediate threat." "That is not how most new species respond," another counselor muttered skeptically. "Indeed," Talek replied, lowering his gaze solemnly. "It was unfortunate, but we had no choice. We neutralized the threat with minimal force necessary. Their ship, while advanced for a species so young, posed no real challenge." He paused for effect, letting the images linger: the brilliant flash of the Discovery's destruction, the drifting debris, the fire consuming her hulls. It was clean, efficient, and above all, irrefutable. At least on the surface. "And what of their homeworld?" asked High Counselor Vare, the most senior among them. His voice was deep and gravelly, and when he spoke, the chamber always fell silent. "What is Earth's current capability?" Talek lifted his chin. "We retrieved their system coordinates during initial contact. I recommend we dispatch an annexation fleet at once. The humans must understand their place in the galactic order." Var narrowed his eyes, his mind clearly weighing consequences. "Do they pose a long-term threat?" "Unlikely," Talek answered without hesitation. "They are fractured, inexperienced in interstellar relations, and emotionally reactive. Their technology is roughly on the edge of Class 3. The Discovery was a diplomatic vessel, yes, but it was also their best. Their response was disorganized and naive. They lacked the resources to resist a full fleet." Several counselors nodded in agreement. Others, still uncertain, leaned in to whisper among themselves. But Var raised a hand once more, silencing the room. "Very well," he said. "Prepare the fleet. Earth will be brought into the Concordate as a protectorate, whether they wish it or not." A wave of approval followed. Talek allowed himself a slow, inward breath. The council had bought it, swallowed the version he fed them whole. No one questioned why the supposedly peaceful humans had resisted. No one noticed the subtle edits in the footage, and no one would ever hear the Discovery's final message. The transmission had been intercepted before it reached Earth. In Talek's mind, the calculus was simple. Humanity would either comply or be swept aside. Back on Earth, however, the silence had meaning. The humans hadn't heard the full truth, but they had received the final fragmented signal from the Discovery, a desperate soz, garbled but unmistakable. There were no diplomatic failures in the message, only panic, fire, and death. But Talek and the High Council didn't know that. Instead, the Concordate's fleets began to assemble, massive dreadnoughts and battlecruisers, each carrying centuries of peacetime doctrine, converged near Earth's solar coordinates. Their arrival was methodical, cloaked under routine maneuvers, then finalized with an official declaration: Earth would be annexed in 3 cycles unless it submitted willingly. From their perspective, this was just another pacification mission, another backward world to fold neatly into the order of things. No one expected resistance, at least not meaningful resistance. But far beyond their polished hulls and perfect war plans, something had already shifted. Humanity was not preparing to beg. They were preparing to respond. 3 years passed in silence. The Galactic Concordat, confident in its power, mistook that silence for surrender. To them, Earth had learned its place. After all, their initial strike had been devastating. The destruction of the Ed's discovery was meant not just as punishment, it was a message. In the Concordat's long and uneventful history, such swift compliance usually followed. But Earth wasn't like the other. Beneath the quiet, behind the diplomatic absence, humanity was moving. Far from the eyes of Concordat scouts, deep in the shadowed edges of the solar system, a hidden transformation was underway. In the Kuiper Belt, an icy graveyard of rock and frozen gas stretching beyond Neptune, a massive shipyard had risen from the void. It was cold, silent, and nearly invisible, masked by both natural debris and powerful electronic countermeasures. It had no name to outsiders, no registry. To those within, it was simply called the Forge. Admiral Seong-han stood at a thick, reinforced viewport, the chill of the low-temperature chamber seeping through his uniform. He'd ordered the station's environmental systems to run at minimum levels, reducing any heat signatures that might be detected by Concordat long-range sensors. Even here, caution was survival. Outside the viewport, it loomed. Humanity's answer. The EDF Retribution, a ship not built for peace, not built for exploration, but for one purpose only: retribution. Its black hull blended perfectly into the void, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. It stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, shaped like a sleek, angular blade. Blue energy lines pulsed slowly along its surface, marking the flow of power through its systems. Its silhouette was unmistakable, a predator among the stars. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" a voice murmured behind. Han turned. Dr. Elise Song, the project's lead scientist, approached with a data tablet in one hand and a half-drunk cup of coffee in the other. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a loose frayed bun, but there was pride in her expression. Han nodded once. "Status report?" Song handed him the tablet. 98% completion. All weapon systems are online and tested. The FTL drive is not only operational, it's been pushed beyond Concordat limits, just like you requested. Han scanned the report, eyes flicking over numbers and diagnostic. Every system had been refined through sleepless nights and desperate innovation. The ship wasn't just advanced, it was revolutionary. "Shield system?" he asked. "Integrated and adaptive," Song replied, straightening her posture slightly. "It absorbs and redirects energy attacks, while the gravitational distortion field can halt projectiles and even slow incoming ships. It's unlike anything they've ever seen." "And the crew?" 600 of Earth's best. Every nation contributed. They've been training in simulators for 2 years, running war games against Concordat tactics. She paused, then added with quiet conviction, "They're ready." Han set the tablet down on a nearby control panel, taking one last look at the ship beyond the glass. 3 years ago, the Discovery was destroyed. The attack had united humanity like no treaty or threat ever could. Rivalries dissolved overnight, borders lost meaning. Funding poured in, secrets were buried, and the world moved in lockstep toward a single goal: make sure this never happens again. The Retribution was the result. Not just a warship, but a symbol of survival, of resolve, of vengeance tempered by purpose. Song spoke again, quieter now. The infiltration teams we sent to their outposts, they succeeded. We have detailed data on their fleet specs, shield frequencies, even their communication protocols. And they suspect nothing? Han asked. She shook her head. Our decoy mining operations in the asteroid belt have kept them distracted. They see exactly what we want them to see. A scared, fractured species gathering resources in desperation. Han allowed himself the smallest smile. Good, he said. Let them believe we're afraid. It's the last mistake they'll make. She hesitated. Admiral, we're still outnumbered. 13 ships, battle-tested. If this goes wrong. He turned to her, eyes calm and resolute. The Concordat has spent 10,000 years in peace. Their officers are politicians. Their ships were designed for intimidation, not war. We may be new to space, but we are not new to war. He tapped a control on his wrist communicator. Bridge, this is Admiral Han. Begin final launch preparations. We deploy in 24 hours. Aye, Admiral, came the reply. Song looked back through the viewport. The massive black ship hovered silently, ready. An answer forged in fire, wrapped in shadows, waiting to move. Han stood tall beside her. History will remember what we built here. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. And what we're about to do? As they walked away, the retribution remained, motionless in a void, silent, patient, and deadly. Waiting to remind the galaxy that silence does not mean surrender. Nexus Station had always been the crown jewel of the galactic Concordat, a spiraling marvel of alien engineering that served as the heart of trade, diplomacy, and unity among 17 advanced species. Its glowing corridors bustled daily with thousands of merchants, envoys, travelers, and dignitaries. For over 50 years, it had functioned without incident. No wars, no attacks. Just commerce and order. Station Controller Pell, a seasoned Concordat officer with 6 dexterous fingers and a mind honed by decades of routine, stood at his usual post in the central control deck. He tapped through arrival schedules with quiet efficiency. Docking Bay 17 needs to be cleared for the Vlandi delegation, his assistant reported. Done, Pell replied without looking up. Make sure their ships get priority lanes. You know how they get when they're delayed. It was shaping up to be another predictable day. That illusion shattered less than 2 minutes later. Every alarm on the command deck erupted at once. Warning lights flared red. Sirens screamed. Consoles blinked with dozens of simultaneous alerts. What the hell is happening? Pell demanded, bolting upright. Massive energy surge just outside the defense perimeter, a sensor operator shouted. Another officer turned toward him, pale with disbelief. Sure, it's a hyperspace rupture. Something's coming through. From where? No known Concordat origin. It's not one of ours. The main view screen switched automatically to the sector in question. The fabric of space tore open, bright as a miniature star, and from within the breach emerged a monster. The ship that appeared made everyone on the command deck freeze. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, vast, black as the void itself, and shaped like a weapon. It didn't reflect light, it consumed it. Its hull was marked by glowing blue veins that pulsed slowly, like the ship itself had a heartbeat. Along its sides were countless weapon ports, sensor arrays, and protrusions that radiated controlled menace. How big is it? Pell managed. Just under 3 kilometers long, the sensor operator whispered. Mass readings are off the charts. So, this ship doesn't exist in any Concordat registry. No one said it out loud, but every being on that deck was thinking the same thing. This wasn't supposed to be possible. The ship moved with a smooth, deliberate grace, coming to a stop directly in front of the station. Communications signal detected, someone called out. They're hailing up. Pell swallowed hard, put them through. The screen shifted, a new bridge appeared. It was stark, functional, and unmistakably human. At its center stood a tall man in a black uniform trimmed with gold. His face was calm, steady, and very, very human. This is Admiral Seong Han of the Earth Defense Force vessel Retribution, the man said, his voice carrying authority like thunder in still air. 3 years ago, your Concordat destroyed our diplomatic ship, the Discovery, and threatened our homeworld. You mistook our silence for submission. It was preparation. The control room went dead quiet. Pell's voice cracked. Human vessel, this is a peaceful trading hub. We have over 10,000 civilians aboard. Please stand down. No civilians will be harmed today, Han interrupted. Okyoi is with your leadership. A young officer leaned close to Pell, whispering urgently. The station's defense fleet is moving to intercept. 12 ships already locking coordinates. Good, Pell thought. The fleet would bring the situation under control. But Han's face never changed. No concern, no fear. Your vessels are preparing to attack, he said evenly. That would be a mistake. Suddenly, a pulse of energy erupted from the Retribution. No visible beam, no explosion, just a wave. And just like that, every ship in the defense fleet went dark. Sure, the sensor operator shouted. All defense systems just dropped offline. Engines, weapons, shields, everything's dead. Peel stared at the screen, horrified. How? We don't know, sir. Some kind of electromagnetic interference. But it's too controlled. Surgical. They didn't disable the station, just the fleet. Back on the main screen, Admiral Hans spoke again. This is a demonstration. We could have destroyed your entire defense fleet in seconds. We chose not to. You have 12 hours to arrange a summit with the Concordat High Council. Earth will speak as an equal, or we will dismantle your alliance system by system. Then the screen went dark. For several moments, no one spoke. Pell's mind reeled. They had come expecting a primitive species. Instead, humanity had arrived with a vengeance and technology that could paralyze a fleet without firing a shot. Finally, Pell found his voice. Send an emergency transmission to the High Council. Priority 1. Right now. As the orders were relayed, he looked once more at the alien vessel that had brought the Concordat to its knees without even pulling a trigger. It didn't need to. It had already made its points. In the Grand Council chamber of the Concordat, the atmosphere was unlike anything ever felt in its 10,000-year history. Emergency lights pulsed across the vaulted ceilings of the circular chamber. 17 representatives from the galaxy's most advanced civilization sat in tense silence, the weight of their collective power suddenly feeling less certain. Their eyes were fixed on the central holoscreen, which displayed the footage that had just arrived from Nexus station. A single, unidentified black ship disabling a fully armed defense fleet without firing a single shot. Ambassador Talek stood before them, pacing in tight, anxious circles. His 6 eyes blinked in rapid, uneven rhythm, a clear sign of distress among his species. For the first time in centuries, the Concordat had been caught off guard. This is not possible, Talek snapped, his normally measured tone sharp with disbelief. 3 years ago, they were barely able to construct a faster-than-light drive. How could they have built something like this? High Counselor Var, the eldest and most respected voice in the room, finally broke the heavy silence. His deep, gravelly voice cut through the tension like a blade. It seems, Ambassador, that we have severely underestimated the humans. Talek stopped pacing. Their technology outpaces our projections by centuries. That vessel Retribution shouldn't exist. Not yet. Not for 1,000 years. Another voice, softer and more composed, rose from the analyst's gallery. A small, gray-skinned figure stepped forward. Ren, the Concordat's leading xenobiologist. With permission, she said, addressing the council. Var gave a silent nod. We made a critical error in our evaluation, Ren began. We judged the human species solely on their technological stage. We failed to consider their behavioral evolution. Explain, Var said. Ren raised her hand and activated a new hologram, an evolving timeline of Earth's history. In just the last 200 years, humans have fought more internal wars than many of our species have in their entire existence. While most concordant civilizations developed technology through long eras of peace and collaboration, humanity advanced under constant conflict. She zoomed in on data points: world wars, revolutions, global arms races. They've learned to innovate under pressure, to adapt, to weaponize every discovery. A younger counselor scoffed. Are you saying they're more dangerous because they fought each other more often? Ren didn't flinch. Yes, precisely that. Where the Vax took 1,000 years to transition from projectile weapons to energy-based systems, humans did it in less than a century. Not because they had time, but because they didn't. Conflict pushed them forward. She changed the display again, now showing blueprints of the retribution compiled from scout data. This ship is not a product of peaceful research. It's war-forged. Every system on it was designed not for show, not for intimidation, but for survival. They learned from the wreckage of our lost scouts. They reversed engineered Concorda technology, then improved it. Talix sneered. Are you suggesting that this primitive species outperformed our finest engineers in just 3 years? Ren nodded solemnly. I am, because they think differently. We build systems for elegance and tradition. They build for effectiveness, for impact. And now we're seeing the result. A cold hush settled over the chamber. Var leaned forward, his expression unreadable. So what do we do? There was no immediate answer. Some whispered. Some sat in silent disbelief. But Ren's conclusion was unavoidable. If we provoke them further, we risk igniting a war we're not prepared to fight. One ship already shifted the balance of power. We don't know how many more they've built. Var turned toward Talix. You said they were disorganized, naive. But they've outmaneuvered us at every step. You misread them. They deceived us, Talix snapped defensively. They acted weak on purpose. Or we just weren't paying attention, Var replied coldly. He stood slowly, the weight of the moment reflected in every movement. I will not risk Concordat lives because of our arrogance. He gestured to his aide. Prepare a diplomatic delegation. We will meet with the humans as equals. The chamber erupted into overlapping voices, some protesting, some pleading, some already resigning themselves to the new reality, but none could ignore what they'd witnessed. The age of unquestioned Concordat dominance was over. Ren quietly turned back to her console, updating the threat classification for humanity in the Concordat database. She erased the prior rating minimal threat and replaced it with a single word: extreme. High Commander Grafa stood at the helm of the Eternal Wisdom, the Concordat's flagship, watching a wall of stars through the vast curved viewport. Around him stretched the greatest war fleet the galaxy had ever assembled, 300 ships from all 17 Concordat species, each battle-tested, armed to the teeth, and arranged in flawless formation. 1,000 years of doctrine had gone into this armada. On paper, no force in known space could stand against it. And yet, at the center of it all, one black ship hovered in absolute defiance. The EDBF Retribution floated like a spear tip pointed at the heart of their fleet. Its hull was blacker than space itself, sharp-edged and sleek, with pulsing blue lines along its surface like veins beneath skin. It showed no signs of fear, no attempt to retreat, no message of surrender. It just waited. All ships report ready, Commander, his first officer announced. Formation Alpha locked, awaiting your order. Grafa nodded. Open a channel. The communications officer complied. A moment later, his voice echoed out across the void. This is High Commander Grafa of the Concordat Unified Fleet. Human vessel, you have violated Concordat space and threatened our world. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. The response came within seconds. A woman appeared on screen, standing tall in a dark uniform with gold insignias along the shoulders. Her tone was calm, almost casual. This is Admiral Mina Choi of the Earth Defense Force vessel Retribution. Your fleet is unnecessary. We came to negotiate, not to fight. Grafa scowled. Negotiation happens after surrender. You have 1 minute to comply. Admiral Choi tilted her head slightly, almost amused. I'm afraid that won't be possible. but you're welcome to try whatever you think best. The screen cut off. Grapha turned to his tactical officer. Move to attack position. Standard encirclement. Maximum firepower on primary target. The fleet began to shift, tightening its noose around the human vessel with mathematical precision. It was a formation perfected over centuries designed to concentrate fire while minimizing exposure. On concorded ships, targeting systems lit up, energy weapons charged, missile bays opened. On board the Retribution, Admiral Choi remained perfectly composed as her crew moved with synchronized grace. Commander Bay, her tactical chief, glanced up from his console. They're surrounding us, 312 ships. All weapons live. They'll fire in salvos, Choi said, leaning forward. Start with their command ships. Identify the firing sequence. Deploy gravity anchor. Anchors deploying, they confirmed. Across the hull of the Retribution, dozens of emitters activated. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were spatial manipulation fields technology derived from concordant gravitational theories, refined by human innovation. The effect was instant. 50 Concordat warships, closest to the Retribution, suddenly froze in space. Their engines whined and sputtered as if caught in invisible restraints. The ships drifted helplessly like insects pinned beneath glass. Gravitational locks confirmed, Bay said. They're immobile. Grapha's voice cracked through the chaos on the eternal wisdom. What just happened? They've immobilized our forward line, the science officer shouted, panic in her voice. Localized gravity fields. We thought they were theoretical. The Concordat was still trying to understand when the Retribution fired. But it didn't fire like they expected. No continuous beam. No overwhelming barrage. Instead, dozens of micropulses shot out in perfect sequence, each targeting a single subsystem. Engines, weapons arrays, comms, power cores, comms, power core. There were no explosions, no carnage. Just silence and lights going dark across ship after ship. First volley complete, Bay reported. 37 targets disabled. No casualties? Choi nodded. Second wave incoming. Prepare adaptive shields. As the remaining Concordat ships fired in synchronized retaliation, the space around the Retribution shimmered. Its shields didn't resist blindly. They responded dynamically. Energy beams were absorbed and redirected. Kinetic weapons were halted by microgravitational field. Missiles were neutralized before reaching impact ray. Shields holding at 92, Bay announced. Learning algorithms improving response efficiency. The Retribution fired again, another volley of precise surgical strikes. Engines died. Weapon systems shut down. Entire ships began to drift, powerless. Grapha stared at his view screen, unable to comprehend what was unfolding. They're disabling us without even damaging our hulls, he muttered. How? His tactical officer, a four-eyed veteran of a dozen engagements, looked rattled. They're not just using technology. They understand war. Grapha looked out at the dying formation around him. In all his years, he'd never seen anything like this. We've awakened something terrible. More reports poured in, another 30 ships disabled. Panic swept the fleet. We need to retreat, Commander, his first officer urged. We've lost a third of our force. Grapha hesitated, but before he could speak, another message came through. Admiral Choi reappeared on screen, her voice calm but final. This demonstration has gone far enough. We ask only what we always have, recognition as equals. Threaten humanity again and we will dismantle your fleets one by one. The choice is yours. Grapha's pride screamed against surrender, but the battlefield was clear. He gave the only answer left. We will inform the High Council. The Retribution stood down its weapons, but not its defenses. Humanity had come to the table, and the galaxy would never look at them the same again. The massive doors of the Concordat Grand Council chamber slid open with a solemn hiss. A hush swept over the assembly as the human delegation stepped inside. For 10,000 years, This chamber had been the heart of galactic authority, a place where the fate of entire species was debated, decreed, and enforced. Never before had a species so young, so recently discovered, stood in this room as anything but a subject of observation or a target for assimilation. But today, Earth entered as an equal. Leading the group was Admiral Seong Han, dressed in a crisp, jet-black formal uniform, adorned only with the insignia of Earth's Defense Force and the silver seal of the United Earth Government. He walked with quiet authority, each step echoing across the marble-like floor. Behind him followed 5 diplomats, 3 men and 2 women, each selected not for political clout, but for composure, clarity, and an unshakable understanding of what this moment meant. The chamber itself was built to impress. Tiered seating spiraled high into the ceiling where representatives of the 17 concordate species sat, some in traditional robes, others in biological exoharnesses, many wearing expressions ranging from skeptical curiosity to outright discomfort. At the highest tier, Supreme Counselor Zhou rose slowly from his ornate seat. His long, weathered face showed the weight of recent days of battles, lost not by bloodshed, but by truth. "They're here," one of his aides whispered. Zhou gave a silent nod and began his descent toward the central platform, a symbolic move not lost on the other delegate. To meet another on equal footing was unheard of for the Concordat, but this was no ordinary occasion. Han reached the center first. He paused, glanced once around the chamber, and locked eyes with Zhou as the Supreme Counselor approached. The silence stretched long, tense, and loaded with history yet unwritten. "On behalf of the Concordat Council," Zhou said, his voice amplified by the room's ancient acoustics, "I welcome the representatives of Earth." The translator repeated the words in flawless English. Han gave a respectful bow. "On behalf of the United Earth Government, I thank you for your welcome." Zhou stopped a pace away from him. There was a moment's hesitation. Then he extended his hand to gesture mimicked from human custom. Han accepted it. Gasps rippled through the tires. Zhou continued, voice firm but humbled. "The Concordat acknowledges Earth as a sovereign power. We offer a formal apology for the actions taken against your vessel Ed's discovery. We seek peace." Han nodded. "Earth accepts your apology, and likewise seeks peace." A breath of relief passed through many corners of the chamber. But Han wasn't finished. "Understand this," he said, his voice carrying far without needing amplification. "Humanity will never be subjugated, not by force, not by protocol. We come not as conquerors, nor as pawns, but as participants in the future of this galaxy." Zhou spread his hands. "The events of recent days have made that abundantly clear. Your ship, the Retribution, has altered the balance of power in ways we could not have imagined." Han's expression remained neutral. "The Retribution is just the first. Earth has constructed 3 more vessels of similar capability." Gasps turned into alarmed whispers. Some representatives stood abruptly, speaking in urgent tones to aides. Others exchanged worried glances. Earth was no longer a curiosity. It was now a force. Han raised his hand calmly. "This is not a threat. It's a reality. We don't seek dominion. We seek respect, a seat at the table, the freedom to explore, trade, and protect our people." Zhou studied the human admiral closely. "If not conquest, then what does Earth truly want?" Han answered without pause. "Assurance that what happened to the Discovery will never happen again. That our colonies, ships, and lives will not be treated as disposable, because we are new to the stars." Zhou gave a slow nod. "These are reasonable requests, but the Concordat would ask something in return." Han tilted his head. "We're listening." Zhou hesitated, then said carefully, "Your technology, particularly your defensive systems. There are threats in this galaxy beyond even our reach. Species that neither negotiate nor pause. Your strength could protect many." Han allowed a faint smile. "We anticipated. Earth is willing to share certain advances, medical, energy, transportation. But our military systems will remain proprietary." Zhou raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you offer?" Han stepped closer. Protection, not weapons. Guardianship. For the first time, the chamber was stunned, not by fear, but by hope. Over the next 6 hours, diplomats worked tirelessly to finalize what would become one of the most unprecedented treaties in galactic history. Earth would remain sovereign, free to expand within agreed limit. In return, Earth's ships would serve as peacekeepers and protectors for concorded space. As Han pressed his thumb to the treaty's holographic seal, his final words echoed through the chamber. Humanity's long history of warfare has finally found its purpose. We will be the guardians of peace in a galaxy that has forgotten how to fight. And with that, a new chapter began not just for Earth, but for all. 5 years had passed since Earth signed its historic treaty with the Concordat. In that time, the galaxy changed. Slowly, cautiously, the 17-member alliance adapted to humanity's presence, not just as participants in trade or diplomacy, but as defenders. Earth didn't share its weapons, it shared its protection. And while some species still whispered about the threat humans posed, most recognized the reality. In a galaxy that had grown soft in its peace, Earth was the shield no one else had the will to forge. Then came the Scourge. At first, they were rumors. Missing ships, dead systems, sensor echoes where thriving colonies once were. Refugees trickled in from the outer rim, shell-shocked and broken, speaking of nightmares with no face vessels made of organic metal. Weapons fused with bone, a silence that preceded annihilation. They called them the Scourge. The Concordat hesitated, debated, analyzed. As they always had. By the time they acknowledged the threat, 3 outer systems were gone. The 4th Belar was next. Belar was home to 2 billion civilians. It had a modest defense force, a handful of Concordat patrol ships, and evacuation protocols that were laughably outdated. But this time, the humans were already there. Hanging in low orbit over the planet was the EDF Protector, Earth's 3rd-generation battleship, larger and more advanced than the Retribution that had stunned the galaxy years earlier. The Protector had been built not as a deterrent, but for days like this. On its bridge, Admiral Kong stood with arms clasped behind his back, watching the approaching swarm of alien vessels. His face was hard, his voice measured. Status? Scourge fleet approaching fast. His first officer replied. Hundreds of vessels. They're ignoring all hail. Kang nodded. Tactical. Organic hulls. Highly adaptive. They self-repair and replicate damaged ships quickly. But individually, they're weaker than us. Strength in numbers then, Kang said. Hive coordination. Yes, Admiral. They operate as a singular intelligence. He turned to his crew handpicked from every nation on Earth, each one hardened through years of simulations and drills. This is what we prepared for. This is why the Protector exists. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. All systems battle ready. Launch fighter squadrons 1 through 6. Outside the hull, a dozen launch bays lit up. Sleek human starfighters, fast, agile, and ruthlessly effective, burst into space. They moved like living things, zigzagging across the stars in unpredictable formations, confusing the Scourge's predictive algorithms. Within minutes, the first engagement began. The Scourge struck fast and without warning. Energy pulses arced from their ships like lightning, ripping through space. Organic tendrils lashed out, seeking to latch onto anything in range. But the Protector's defenses held. Activate gravity fields, Kang ordered. Across the hull, emitters lit up. Distortions in space twisted around the human battleship, slowing enemy projectiles and warping the trajectories of incoming vessels. Some Scourge ships were ripped apart by their own momentum. Others were held in place like flies trapped in amber. Fire. The Protector responded with chilling precision. Its weapons didn't saturate the battlefield they targeted. Each pulse of energy, each gravitational disruption, each torpedo, everything struck a vital system. Enemy coordination collapsed in segments. Hive nodes blinked offline. Ships drifted, powerless. But the Scourge learned quickly. A second wave adjusted their attack. They spread wider, split into unpredictable paths. They targeted the fighters. Some made it through. Shields down to 80%, Tactical reported. We're adapting faster than they are. Kang nodded. Then we press the advantage. Focus on their central command cluster. Break the Hive. A surge of human firepower followed. And slowly, the Scourge began to falter. The battle raged for 14 hours. From the surface of Belar, billions watched the sky glow with flashes of blue and red. Each pulse was a life, a weapon, a scream held back by a shield. They had prepared to flee. Now they stood on rooftops, in fields, behind windows watching the silhouette of one black ship hold the line. When the final Scourge ship fled limping, damaged, and alone, the cheers erupted across continents. Back on the Protector, Admiral Kang exhaled slowly. Damage report? Minor hull scarring. Shield generator 3 overloaded. Casualties. 12 pilots injured. No fatalities. Kang looked around the bridge. Well done. Inform Concordat Command. The system is secure. Far away in the council chambers, Supreme Counselor Joe received the report with visible relief. Around him, the room buzzed with stunned admiration. The Scourge, unstoppable by any Concordat fleet, had been repelled. One younger counselor leaned in. What if the humans ever turn on us? Joe didn't respond immediately. He stared at the stars beyond the window, remembering the day he met Admiral Han 5 years ago. He recalled the words that sealed their treaty. The true measure of power, Han had said, is not how hard you strike, but how much you protect. Joe turned back to the counselor and said simply, that tells us everything we need to know. Across the galaxy, the EDF Protector set course for its next mission. And somewhere deep in the darkness, the Scourge reeled, for they had encountered something new. A defender who did not retreat. A species that remembered how to fight. The battle for Belar was over. The skies had burned for nearly an entire day, but when the smoke cleared and the stars returned, the only ship still holding position above the planet was black, silent, and undefeated. The EDF Protector had stood its ground, and in doing so, it had shattered the myth of Scourge invincibility. Across Belar's surface, billions of citizens stared upward. Some had gathered on rooftops, others stood in crowded squares. They had prepared to die. Some had even begun evacuating their families. But now, they watched in awe as the massive human battleship, scarred but intact, hovered like a guardian between them and the void. In the Concordat High Council chamber, the silence was absolute as the transmission from Belar ended. Every delegate present had just witnessed something they never thought possible: the total defeat of a Scourge invasion force, not by the Concordat's own fleets, but by a single Earth vessel. Supreme Counselor Joe sat back in his chair, eyes distant, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Around him, aides whispered urgently to their representatives. Reports were exchanged, theories murmured, but none could mask the undercurrent of disbelief. "It seems," Joe finally said, voice calm and low, "our treaty with Earth was even wiser than we knew." "But what happens when they decide not to help us?" asked one of the younger counselors. His tone was cautious, but his fear was evident. "They have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. What if they turn those weapons on us?" Joe turned toward him slowly. "I remember the day Admiral Han walked into this chamber. No weapons, no threats. Just a quiet promise." He paused, letting the memory return in full. "The true measure of power is not how hard you strike," Han had said, "but how much you can protect." Those words had lingered with Joe for years, and today they had proven true. "If humanity had wanted to conquer us," Joe continued, "they could have. 5 years ago, when they first revealed the retribution, they could have dismantled this council in hours. Instead, they offered protection." The chamber fell into thoughtful silence. A few nodded slowly. Others looked at one another, still struggling to reconcile the truth. Humanity had chosen to be a shield, not a sword. And out in the darkness of the stars, that shield was already moving. The EDF protector turned from Belar, setting course for the next system under threat. There were no speeches, no ceremonies, just a quiet departure, efficient and focused. Humanity had no interest in gloating. Their goal was simple: ensure that what happened to the Discovery never happened to anyone again. In hidden systems, deep beyond Concordia territory, the Scourge were reeling. Their hive nodes clicked in unison, transmitting confusion, frustration, and something their species had never known before: hesitation. For centuries, they had devoured everything in their path. Resistance was rare, and when it came, it never lasted. But this was different. They had faced a defender that adapted in real time. One that struck not out of rage, but with calculated precision. The humans had not merely resisted, they had outmatched. In their strange hive language built from pulses and frequencies, the Scourge updated their archive. Humanity high threat, humanity unpredictable, humanity dangerous. Back on Earth, few citizens celebrated openly. News of the victory was acknowledged, certainly, but not in parades or public broadcasts. Humanity remembered the cost of war too well to romanticize it. Instead, families gathered around screens in quiet pride. Soldiers checked in with loved ones, engineers reviewed performance logs, scientists cross-referenced tactical data to improve the next line of defense systems. Admiral Kang, back on the Protector's bridge, reviewed the battle footage alone, not for ego, but to learn. Every maneuver, every energy spike, every enemy adaptation, he logged it all. Admiral, his communications officer, called out gently, "We've received a personal message from Supreme Counselor Joe. Play it." Joe's face appeared tired but sincere. "Admiral Kang, on behalf of the entire Concordat, I offer our gratitude. You've not only protected Belar, you've shown us what power, when wielded with purpose, truly looks like." Kang didn't reply. He simply nodded and closed the transmission. To him, it wasn't about thanks. It was about responsibility, because Earth had learned something in the aftermath of the Discovery. When power is left in the hands of those who've never had to fight for it, they grow complacent. But when it's forged through struggle, it gains meaning, purpose, restraint. Earth didn't rise to dominate. It rose because no one else was willing to stand. And in the cold vacuum of space, where diplomacy often fails and silence becomes a graveyard, one truth now echoed louder than any fleet: humanity didn't just remember how to fight. They remembered why. In the years following Earth's rise as a galactic power, the stars grew quieter but not safer. The Concordat, once the unchallenged authority across 100 systems, now operated with a new understanding. Power did not belong solely to those who claimed it early. It belonged to those willing to bear its weight. And after the Scourge invasion was repelled above Belar, that weight rested firmly on human shoulders. Admiral Hahn stood at the observation deck of the orbital station Arden's Line, one of the forward command hubs now jointly operated by Earth and the Concordat. Below him, the curve of a once vulnerable planet shimmered in orbit. Behind him, alien officers and human tacticians worked side by side in what had once been an unthinkable arrangement. 5 years ago, Concordat leaders saw humans as primitive. Now they wore Earth's colors in times of crisis. Han's reflection stared back at him from the glass older now, his face marked by the choices he had made. But his eyes were still sharp, focused, watchful. Director Wren, the Concordat's leading xenobiologist, stepped quietly beside him. She had once been the analyst who classified humans as a minimal threat. Now, she stood next to the man who had rewritten that assumption in the fire of war. "You were right," she said softly. "About everything." Han didn't respond right away. His eyes remained fixed on the stars. "We weren't trying to prove anything. We just refused to be forgotten." Wren folded her hands behind her back. "You could have become conquerors. You had every opportunity." "And what would that have made us?" Han said, finally turning to look at her. "The galaxy doesn't need more tyrants. It needs guardians." Ren nodded slowly. You've become something more than just powerful. You've become necessary. That truth was no longer a quiet realization, it was openly acknowledged. The Concordat now worked alongside Earth in joint patrols. Human warships escorted convoys, responded to distress calls, and trained Allied forces in battlefield tactics long forgotten by the galaxy's peacetime generation. The Retribution, once a symbol of fear, had become an emblem of balance. It had never fired a shot in conquest, but it had silenced 1,000 threats before they began. Elsewhere, scattered reports continued to trickle in. Pockets of the Scourge still moved beyond Concordat reach. Other darker things lurked in the unexplored regions, predatory civilizations that had never been mapped, never been challenged. The galaxy was ancient, but far from tamed. And Earth understood that better than anyone. In the command briefing that followed, Admiral Choi, now senior strategist of the Earth Defense Force, addressed a coalition task force gathered in the operations chamber. She stood before representatives of 8 species, all eyes on her as she spoke. "We are not fighting for territory," she began. "We are not building an empire, we're holding the line. Every planet we protect, every ship we shielded, pushes the darkness back a little more." She gestured to a star map glowing on the wall behind her. "This isn't about Earth anymore. This is about the kind of galaxy we want to live in." Silence followed her words, not out of doubt, but out of respect. Later that night, as the ships of the fleet began their rotations, Admiral Han returned to the communications tower overlooking the launch deck. Below him, the Protector and the Retribution were being refueled, their hulls freshly patched from past engagement. Beyond them, smaller Concordat vessels now bore hybrid markings, joint insignias representing unity once thought impossible. He leaned on the railing and looked outward. Earth had done what no other civilization dared. It rose without asking for permission, and instead of burning its way into history, it offered its strength to hold the galaxy together. That offer hadn't always been accepted with grace. Fear lingered. Skepticism endured, but trust, once given, had begun to take root. A soft chime pulled him from his thoughts. A message from Supreme Counselor Joe had just arrived, brief, personal, and genuine. "We once thought power meant dominance. You taught us that power means choice. You chose to protect. And we are still here because of it." Han closed the message, eyes steady, and gave a quiet nod to no one in particular. This was why humanity had endured war, why it had clawed its way into the stars, not to remake the galaxy in its image, but to ensure no one else was ever silenced the way they had been. Across the vastness of space, Earth's ships continued to patrol, not to invade, not to rule, but to stand between danger and those who could not stand for themselves. Because in the end, the galaxy hadn't just remembered that humanity could fight. It remembered why they chose to, and that more than any weapon, any ship, or any strategy was what made them truly powerful.